Now I want to frame the floor, and I'm going to use 2x2s and 2x4s. 2x4s I'm going to use on the perimeter of the floor, and also at the spots where the two sheets of subfloor meet, right? Because they are 4 feet wide, so every 4 feet I'm going to put a 2x4, so there is a bigger overlap, so I can screw them nicely. They can hold, the subfloor can be screwed into the 2x4s, and then between the 2x4s I'll put 2x2s, and that'll be just to support the subfloor so it doesn't bow. And I can screw the subfloor into that 2x2 because I only have to screw one. I don't have to screw 2 sheets of subfloor. Now over here in the back, the bus is curved, so I want to cut that 2x4 to follow the curve, and it just happened that the curvature of the bus is the same curvature as the 1 gallon of paint. So basically I'm going to use this to draw on the 2x4 and then cut it with a jigsaw. I also have these metal plates that the previous owner of the bus put in to patch the holes, and they're pretty thick. They're like 3/16 of an inch or so thick, maybe 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to have to cut notches into the 2x4s to compensate for this, because otherwise if I put 2x4 it's just going to raise it there, so it's going to raise the whole floor and everything. So I need to cut a notch here and then here on the 2x4, so it all is flush and flat. So here's my 2x4. I bought 12-foot lengths 2x4s, and I'm just going to use the gallon can of paint and basically draw this curvature here. Here's how it looks like. Okay, that's looking good. And now I'm going to use these self-drilling Teks wood to metal screws. They're 2 3/4 long. I don't need them this long, obviously, because the wood is 1.5 inches thick, and then you have a little bit for the metal floor. But I couldn't find smaller that's still big enough to fit this. So these ones gonna stick out under the bus a little bit more, but who cares? You can't see them. All right, screwing these every about 2 feet. Here is one tip for you. So the 2x4s that I bought, they come in like 8-foot size, 12-foot, 16-foot long. These are 12 feet. And the subfloor is 4 feet wide, so 4x8. So basically, perfectly 3 subfloors will fit on top of one 12-foot 2x4. And if you just install the 2x4 in 12 feet, right, and you put the subfloor on top of it, the subfloor will end exactly the same spot where the 2x4 is ending. And you're gonna have to screw that subfloor into the 2x4, which means there are chances that the top screw will hit the bottom screw of the 2x4. So what I did is I chopped the 12-foot 2x4, what is this, like 5 inches shorter. So now when I put the subfloor on top of it, the subfloor will end right here. So I can screw the subfloor without worries, screw it into the 2x4, it will not be hitting the screw. All right. Alright, so I went around every 4 feet. I marked with a pencil every 4 feet on the edges here on the left and right side of the bus. On the 2x4s, I mark every 4 feet because that's how wide the plywood is that I'm going to put for the subfloor. And I measured it from the very back up to the front, so I know where I need to put the perpendicular 2x4s that go down the middle of the bus, I mean from left to right. So that's how I know. And I'm going to put 2x4s every 4 feet, and then probably every 2 feet I'm going to put 2x2s that's in the middle of the plywood. Okay, I finished framing 2x4s. As I mentioned, I measured 4 feet from the very back. Every 4 feet I put a mark and I put a 2x4 there. That's where the subfloor will meet the next piece of subfloor. Those are gonna be the seams basically. So I wanted a wider 2x4 there so I can screw them in and they can fasten well. So every 4 feet I have 2x4s. Sorry for the mess. It's just I don't want to take everything out of the bus just so I can record. I don't have time for that. Fortunately, but every 4 feet 2x4s, I use 5 screws for each piece that is vertical, here perpendicular I mean. And these are wood to metal screws, Teks. And then here on the wheel well, I did it like this. This piece is also 4 feet away from the previous one over there. This is where the second to last piece of subfloor will end. Right there, and then I'm gonna have one small piece that's gonna go around here and over here. That's why I had to add this other piece here so I can screw the subfloor into it. And I gotta figure out still the framing for the wheel well. And gotta think if I want to do that now or I want to do spray foam first and then do it afterwards. We'll see. And now what I'm doing here is I'm putting 2x2s between the 2x4s. So then we're gonna have framing for the subfloor every 2 feet. Okay, I finished screwing all the 2x2s into the floor. I wanted to show you. There. And over here by the wheel well, I added 2x2s as well on this side, so I can, so the the subfloor has support in there as well. And over here, I did not add a 2x2, but I feel like it might not even need it. I'm just gonna screw the subfloor into this. That's how it looks. Now, we want to have 2 inches of spray foam on the floor. Now these 2x4s are, of course, they are 1.5 inch tall. So we're missing 1/2 inch. So we decided to get some plywood that's 1/2 inch thick and screw it on top of the 2x4. And that will give us a total of 2 inches thickness for the spray foam. So that's what I did. I cut a piece of, I think this is CDX plywood, that type. It was on the cheaper side, 1/2 inch thick, and I did the curve in the corner with a 1 gallon can of paint to mark the corner since it perfectly matches. I cut that out and then now I'm gonna just screw it in. As you see, I'm overlapping it over the 2x4. That's gonna be better and flatter surface than ending into the same spot as the 2x4. That's what I'm trying to do everywhere, do the overlaps. the 1/2-inch plywood strips that go on top of here are also going to serve kind of like a thermal break for these screws that are touching the metal, because there are going to be new screws screwing the strips of 1/2-inch plywood into the 2x4. Plywood strips cut out, and I'm gonna do them on the side first, on the sides, and then in the middle. I was thinking about overlapping them, so making these middle ones, perpendicular ones, longer to overlap the joints here, but that will create the ones on the side to be smaller sections that I have to cut instead of using the whole foot length, 8-foot length. So I'm just gonna do them like this. And I got deck screws. These are a little different than the ones I've used previously, but still deck screws. They're 1.25 long. You can go with inch if you find some, but I just couldn't find those, so I got the inch ones. 1.25. I mean inch and. Yeah, 1.25. And now I'm doing the cross pieces. Now I've cut out 1.5 inch wide strips of 1/2-inch plywood for the framing that's between the 2x4s on top of the 2x2s, to bring that to 2 inches total thickness. All right, framing of the floor is complete. I have 2 inches of thickness for the spray foam, and the frames are, the pieces are 2 feet on center apart, and I was thinking about doing 1/2-inch plywood as a subfloor, but if I were to do that, I would want to put down the middle of the bus another piece of framing where we would be walking, because 1/2 inch is a little thinner. But I decided to not do that and just put 3/4 inch plywood on the floor, subfloor, and that'll be thick enough. It'll hold up. I won't need to put any more framing in the middle, and that's not gonna add a lot more weight. Here is I put the 1/2-inch plywood just to test it out, and even with a 1/2-inch plywood, there is very little flex, but I'm gonna just do 3/4 inch. It's gonna be only a few 100 pounds. This bus can handle it. It has the gross vehicle weight rating of 29,600 pounds, I believe. So there it is. You see the subfloor. It's done. I have the ceiling already done, and now I'm just gonna do the walls, and I'll be done with the framing. Here you can see the front side here has 1/2-inch plywood on top of the 2x2s and 2x4s. It even goes, I even have the 2 layers over here. See? So that the whole floor is going to be level.